Welcome and hello from Alex, with a story from r/TalesFrom Mix, where a customer with a cash-only mentality clashes with very clear card-only signage, leading to a satisfyingly silent shutdown. Coming up next is a story from cyntheticturtle. Why doesn't it say card-only? It does, in 3 different places. This story is a few years old, as I no longer work in retail, but it was still one of my most satisfying stories. At the time of this story, I worked at a home improvement retail store. I was a cashier, and on this particular day, I was scheduled to run the self-checkout. Assisted checkout, it went by both names. Now, for this to make sense, I have to describe the self-checkout machines. We had 4 self-checkout machines. On the left side, the machines took cash and card. On the right side, they only took card. The card-only machines said they were card-only in 3 different places. The first places was on the light for the self-checkout register. The second places was on the counter where you set your things in big letters. The third place is on the screen of the self-checkout machine before you start checking out. Despite the fact that there were so many things saying the machines were card-only self-checkout machines, it was very common for people to attempt to pay cash. Usually, I was able to just suspend the transaction and take them to a machine that took cash, so they wouldn't have to restart the transaction, and they would usually laugh at how they missed it being card-only. However, if this was one of the instances where they laughed the mistake off, I wouldn't be posting here. I had a man at one of our card-only self-checkout registers. I can't really remember what he looked like, but I believe he was in his 30s. I was probably 19 or 20 at the time. I noticed him with some cash, trying to find a place to put it in. He looks around and makes eye contact with me. I was already on my way over, so he started to ask me a question immediately. Cast, man, the customer, me, well, me. Man, where do I put in the cash? Me, smiling and chuckling, as this is a common occurrence. Oh, this is a card-only machine. I can suspend the transaction and take you over to one that takes cash. Man, annoyed, and with attitude, well, why doesn't it say card-only then? I stopped smiling and just decided to be blunt, because his inability to pay attention was not my fault. And I said it does. It says it right here. Points to counter, up there, points to self-checkout light, and it says it on the screen before you start checking out. This man was silent the rest of the time. He didn't say another word. He didn't apologize, didn't thank me, nothing. He was just silent as I suspended his transaction and took him to the cash machine so he could finish up. I honestly don't care that he didn't apologize for his rudeness. It was satisfying to embarrass him into silence. I'd like to think he learned to pay attention and not blame others for his mistakes, but that is probably wishful thinking. This story brings back memories of my own retail days. That customer sounds like exactly the kind of person who makes working in retail so frustrating. Here he is, at a clearly labeled card-only machine, trying to use cash and then getting huffy when it doesn't work. The fact that the machine has multiple warnings is just icing on the cake. But good for OP. It sounds like they handled the situation perfectly, calmly explaining the situation, then pointing out the clear signage. Chef's kiss. And while it likely didn't happen, the image of the man being silently shamed into using the correct machine is absolutely delightful. Retail heroes like OP are the reason stores don't descend into utter chaos. Maybe the customer didn't learn a lesson, but OP definitely deserves a medal for their patience and clear communication. Coming up next is a story from mstarrbrannigan. Sir, I told you you're not going to be able to check in. A man got dropped off by an Uber, then came up to the desk and said, I saw online you have rooms for $56. Which was news to me because our rate is $90 after tax tonight. And I told him this along with our credit card requirement and security deposit. He asked if I could match the rice wine rate, and I apologized and said I couldn't, but said it was fine if he wanted to take a moment and book it there. He decided that's what he was going to do and lingered around the desk fiddling with his phone. Meanwhile, the desk phone rang and I answered and quoted the caller the rate for Friday, which is a bonkers rate because of an event in town. After I hung up, the guy in the lobby laughed and said he was glad he wasn't here on Friday because he doesn't have that much for a room and he doesn't have a credit card for a deposit. I realized he must not have been paying attention when I had quoted him the very same deposit earlier, and clarified that the deposit would be required of him when he checked in. He laughed and pointed at his phone and reminded me that he was booking online. I told him that regardless of how he booked, he'd still have to pay the same deposit using a credit card or a major bank debit card. He just chuckled and waved me off dismissively, so I shrugged and let him make his own dumb choices. A few minutes later, he complained to me that he was having trouble booking online because it kept changing the dates on him. I suggested that maybe the rate he wanted was only for a specific date, or didn't exist, but I didn't say that out loud. A few minutes of me awkwardly sitting at the desk passed as he did the boomer stare at his phone over his glasses while standing at the desk directly in front of me. Eventually, he said he'd booked it, and I saw a new reservation pop up a moment later and confirmed his name. I asked for his ID and his card for the deposit, and his face fell. "The guy, I told you, I don't have my credit card here." Bran, as politely as I could manage, "and I told you I would need it to check you in. It also says it on rice wine." He argued that it didn't, and I invited him to hand me his phone, so I scrolled on our page on rice wine to show him exactly where it did in fact say that. He sighed and said, "Fine, I have my credit card number," and showed me a credit card number written out on a scrap of paper. He did this while standing directly next to a sign that states we don't take tap to pay, pictures of credit cards, or any card that is not physically present at the hotel. I've had guests laugh that we have the sign, and they always look horrified when I inform them we have the sign because of how often I've had to tell people, "No, I can't accept this picture of your credit card." He then went through the various prepaid cards in his wallet, asking me if we took any of them, even as I repeatedly told him we don't take debit cards that have not been issued by a bank. Eventually, he accepted defeat and then had to go through the rigmarole of calling rice wine to get his money back. I don't like turning folks away. It's awkward and uncomfortable for everyone involved. I don't know what this guy expected to happen. This story is equal parts frustrating and hilarious. The guest sounds like a real piece of work. First of all, completely ignoring the price and deposit requirements you clearly explain. Yikes. Then trying to argue about the deposit after you already mentioned it. Double yikes. And topping it all off with a handwritten credit card number. Triple yikes. Seriously, how can someone be so unprepared and clueless? It's almost impressive in a way. At least Bran, the hotel clerk, handled it all professionally, even explaining the deposit policy again when the guy clearly wasn't listening the first time, and offering to show proof on the website about the deposit requirement. Sounds like Bran deserves a raise for dealing with such a difficult guest. Coming up next is a story from xdreamsk, and if you like the video so far, don't forget to like the video. It only takes a second and helps me out a lot. Guess who is losing their job? Short answer, it's me. This happened today. Let me tell you a short story. Our company is currently undergoing migration from Google Workspace to Microsoft 365. Because half of the company either use Google or Microsoft, my boss wanted to use only one system. I was doing migration of one phone because we use Google device policy. And apparently the only way to get rid of it is to reinstall the whole phone. So I had one empty phone where I would transfer all the data and then factory reset the phone with device policy. After this, transfer all the data back to the original Android phone without device policy. After I've wiped the original phone, I've also accidentally wiped the second phone where was all the data waiting to be transferred back. So that means that I've lost all the phone data for the user and there was no backup. Photos, documents, contacts, messages, two-factor authentication, all gone. I was asked by my boss if I can help with the migration and I said yes, even when my main role is web dev. I wanted to help the company. Now I am the biggest idiot in the IT department. Ouch, this is a rough one. Here's hoping OP finds a smoother landing soon. Sounds like a classic case of good intentions gone wrong. It's admirable that OP wanted to help out, but migrating data, especially without a backup, seems like a task best left to the IT experts. Wiping a phone with irreplaceable data, that's nightmare fuel. Maybe OP can spin this into a learning experience, a chance to rewrite their resume, highlight their willingness to help, but maybe add a disclaimer about staying in their web dev lane. Everyone makes mistakes, but hopefully this one doesn't cost OP their job. Fingers crossed for a happy ending. Coming up next is a story from Unlucky Umbrella. Don't expect people to know things without telling them. So a part of my job is working as a barista. At this coffee stand we offer 4 milk alternatives: oat, soya, coconut, and ultimate blend. Sometimes people order milk alternatives as a legit allergen, some just as a taste preference. A woman today comes up to the stand and asks for a strawberries and cream frap. I go to start making it for her with normal dairy milk because I haven't been told otherwise. The guy working with me at the time fortunately recognizes her and says that's meant to be soya. She always has soya. So I double check with her and she says yes. Sorry, I forgot to mention, but I am so used to people here knowing that I don't say anymore. She also apparently had the cream alternative rather than the dairy cream, so I assumed the soya milk was for an allergen and not a preference, although I may be wrong. But again, she didn't tell me. The guy I was working with did. My boyfriend also works in a similar line and has people tell him after he's made the drink that it's an allergen and then just walk off, or people expecting him to know that they have a milk alternative without telling him. You can't expect people to know without telling them. If you don't tell us it's an allergen, we can't accommodate it as we normally would. If you don't tell us, we aren't responsible if you have a reaction and go into anaphylactic shock. Even if you're a regular to a certain place, still tell everyone every time. People might be new. People might not recognize you. It might be busy and the server might just be too stressed to remember your allergen info. With things like allergens, it's better to reiterate for the 100th time than risk it by assuming people know. Opie's right on the money here. It's wild to expect baristas or servers to instinctively know someone's regular order, especially when it comes to allergens. Those could be a matter of life and death. It's better to be safe than sorry. A quick "Hey, can I get that with soy milk please? I'm allergic to dairy" takes 2 seconds and avoids a potential disaster. Honestly, the customers Opie and her boyfriend are describing sound oblivious at best and downright dangerous at worst. Imagine walking off after realizing your drink has the wrong milk and could trigger a reaction. Yikes. On the bright side, sounds like Opie and her boyfriend are the responsible ones they should be. Good on them for double-checking and making sure customers get what they need to stay safe and happy. Coming up next is a story from BigBlackButtocks. Waiter called me broke. I was out with my weightlifting team at a place that rhymes with Quifo ladies because we had just won district champions and a vast amount of the team was moving on to regionals. Keep in mind we're all in high school. I have been known to look a little older than I am due to my build being a bit more on the muscular end. But here's what happened. I was eating out with the team and I don't come from a well-off family at all. We're quite poor. So I took my own $10 to go and eat. I would have more, but I am too young to get a job in our small town due to not many opportunities. So our waiter comes over and I try to order off the kids' menu like I always do because I am typically allowed, and she looks at me like I am stupid and says I am much too older for that. The meals were only $7 and I explain in a joking way how I only brought $10 so I could buy that meal, and she says in these exact words, "You're broke and came to eat at Quifo lady." I guess I look quite shocked because she continues on saying, "Oh honey, I am just gonna give you a hard time like that justifies it." My friend offered to pay for me and we all mocked it and laughed, but it still shocked me at how unprofessional it was of some 40-year-old obese country woman working at a restaurant to call me poor. In the end, my friend bought my meal and I tipped her the quarter I had found on the ground, and she says, "Oh, that deserves a slap on the face," like she was a good waiter anyways. I dare that old woman to hit me. Anyways, I would like to hear if anybody else had similar experiences where their waiter was so straightforwardly rude. That waiter's behavior sounds way out of line. It's one thing to joke around with friends, but a stranger, especially someone in a service industry role, shouldn't be calling customers broke. Seriously, who says Quifo ladies anyway? Sounds like your friend is a good sport, stepping in to cover the meal. A lousy quarter tip for bad service feels appropriate though. Good on you for sticking to your budget. The waiter's response about the slap, totally unprofessional. If anything, she deserved the stink eye, not violence. Maybe she was having a bad day, but that doesn't excuse being rude to customers. Hopefully the rest of your celebration went smoothly. District champs and regionals are a big deal. Congrats to you and the team. That wraps up the r/Tales from Mix. If you enjoyed this content, make sure to visit my Spotify channel. Link is in the description, so you can listen to the best Reddit story while being outside, and remember to hit that subscribe button.